All right. Hello, Playground Sessions community. First of all, this is not going to be a very professional video. I'm doing it in one take because I don't own any video editing software, nor do I care to learn how to use any. This is just kind of a quick little how-to. So we all use Playground Sessions. Here it is. You will hear my keyboard that's because the microphone I'm using is fairly sensitive. I apologize. The sounds we're currently hearing is the piano built into Playground Sessions. And it's not a terrible piano. I actually like it a lot. The problem I find is on long, sustained held notes. The sustain gets a little, I want to say, like robotic and artificial. And as I'm struggling through learning new passages, that little bit of artificiality really grates on my nerves, especially when I'm frustrated at my inability to master a new piece. So I decided I wanted better tones. There's lots of ways to do this. I play almost exclusively through headphones because I don't want to bother the rest of my family. This is the age of COVID. Everybody's working from home. One unfortunate effect, if you have an electric piano, like I actually have an electric piano, you could play everything over your speakers and just listen to your the sounds coming from your electric piano. The other alternative is if your electric piano has a input port, you can route the sound coming from your computer to your piano. And then if you go into volume here, you can turn the Playground Sessions piano completely down and just listen to your piano. So those are a couple options if you've got the right keyboard, if you've got the right ports, or if just listening to the room is enough for you. For my purposes, I want to keep the headphones on. And something I've discovered playing around with these plugins is that my electric piano sounded great when I initially got it. One side effect of listening to these VST plugins is I'm suddenly not nearly as happy with the way my electric piano sounds anymore. So that's a little bit of a drawback. And obviously, if your keyboard only does MIDI, if it generates no sound by itself, what I'm about to show you is almost the only way that I can think of to get different tones or better piano tones. Along with the MIDI features of Playground Sessions. And obviously, let's go to advanced settings. You have to be using MIDI. If you're not using MIDI, this is not going to work. You can see I have a Casio PX160, and I'm not going to bother configuring it here. So a problem with Windows, apparently this is not a problem on Mac OS, is that I've set Playground Sessions to use the MIDI stream coming from my electric piano. That's great. But if I want to say we're going to close Playground Sessions real quick here. There's an entire world of software that talks to MIDI. And one of the nicest and free, let me start with a couple warnings. Warning one, you're messing with, if you follow my instructions, you're going to be messing with settings on your computer. If you're in the least bit sketched out or leery of installing software, configuring software, find someone who's comfortable, that sort of thing. The next warning I have to say is don't spend any money. It's not that I don't think that high quality plugins are not worth it. But here's an example. If we go to this, here's an article about MIDI and piano plugins on www.pianodreamers.com, right? And it's actually a really good article that explains how MIDI works and how plugins work. So if you want to go a little deeper, I'll put this link in the description. But it goes over a bunch of what I would say are professional quality plugins, and these have the disadvantage of being just eye-wateringly expensive. I think the least expensive plugin they have on here is this one on the far right, and that is $80 just to make piano noises. I don't think it's $80, even if this thing sounded amazing, I don't think it would be worth $80 more than what you've already paid for your MIDI keyboard or your electric piano plus playground sessions, right? So stick to free stuff, and I'll show you in the video what free stuff to grab. The first, quote unquote free thing to grab. And by the way, the rest of these plugins are anywhere from a couple $100 to almost $1,000. So yeah, stay away from these plugins. There is a company that is kind of like one of the bigger companies around computer-based music, generating music on a computer, as opposed to old school studio setups, and that is Native Instruments. And I will provide a link to these guys in the description as well. They offer, I like to call it the drug dealer model. They give you the first taste free in hopes that you'll come back for more. And please don't take that as a pejorative term, because they are offering something pretty cool for free. What I'm using and what I recommend is this Complete Start. Full version is free. And okay, yeah, we're loading the webpage. It requires you, it's one of these things where it requires you to create an account. It requires you to give up your email address, so you'll get the occasional spam from these guys, but you can opt out of it. If you download this thing, what you end up with is this little doohickey called Complete Control. And in it, you've got quite a bit more than just instruments, right? But if you launch it and you click on this thing that looks like a little bit of a little section of keyboard and say, I just want to hit piano, you will not see, when you just install Complete Control, everything that you see here. Some of these things are coming from other things. But one of the nice things about Complete Control is if you click on something that comes in Complete Control, you get a sample of it. And let's stick with just this ambient EP. The EP stands for electronic piano. So say I want to use this ambient EP instrument, you double click on it, and it brings up the interface of the instrument right here. And if I play my keyboard, it sounds nice, but not very piano-like, and we'll get back to that later. So problem solved, right? So say this is an amazing. Say we want to listen to this while we're practicing playground sessions. We're good to go, right? So let's go up and let's launch playground sessions. Apologies, it will probably launch on my other monitor, and I'll have to drag it over. That's because this is I'm recording on a secondary monitor over here. Oh. And so the first problem we run into is every time I try to launch playground sessions, it stops. The app is not launching, or the application is not launching. What is actually happening is I mentioned earlier that Playground, grabbed that Casio USB connection coming from my electric piano, and it thinks, hey, if I can't open that, I'm gonna take my ball and go home. And so what happened here is when I started up Complete Control, it grabbed the USB MIDI port. So when Playground Sessions fired off or launched, it immediately threw kind of a little bit of hissy fit, and and it stops, it quits. So the immediate problem is, how do I share the MIDI signal coming from my keyboard with both Complete Control and Playground Sessions? Now, Playground Sessions doesn't have this feature, but MIDI used to be a more or less physical interface, whereas every MIDI device had more than one physical plug in the back. You had in, out, and through. And with that, you could chain a bunch of devices together. And so we're going to do that, but in software. So I already looked in Playground Sessions, and Playground Sessions will accept MIDI from a device, but it won't output MIDI. Complete Control will output MIDI. You notice we've got a whole nother button here. It says output. And then we run into another problem. The only things we can output to is this Microsoft GS Wavetable Synth and Casio USB MIDI. None of those will work for what we're trying to do. You can try it. I've tried it. Doesn't work. What we need is basically, we need to create another MIDI port in software that we can send the output from Complete Control out and then back out, what's called a loop back, that we tell Playground Sessions to say, hey, use this software port that we just created instead of trying to grab my keyboard. So this is what happens. The MIDI signals are generated from your keyboard. They go to Complete Control. Complete Control sends them to an instrument to make a pretty noise, but then it forwards that same information to Playground, so you get all the Playground Sessions features that we know and love. All right, so I used to think there was 2 pieces of software that's required, but it's really just 1 piece of software that's required. It is this utility called Loop MIDI, and this is really, other than Native Instruments and piano plugins, it's the key to what we're trying to do. It does exactly what I said we needed, in that it creates a quote-unquote new port in software that the Native Instruments sends the MIDI to, and then Playground Sessions will see this new MIDI port and get its MIDI information from. So again, this is a super important URL, and I will include that in the description. So let's launch Loop MIDI. And there it is. Now what I've done is I've created 3 MIDI ports. You only really need 1. And I have not needed to fiddle with either of the About or Advanced tabs. All I did is, as it comes, there's no MIDI ports configured. So all I did is say, hey, yeah, we don't need 5 of these. So you really just need Loop MIDI port. All right. So now that this is running, let's go back into Complete Control, and oh wow, it kind of magically saw that Loop MIDI had created these output ports, right? And so this must be a remembered setting from before, while I was figuring this out. So so Complete Control is set up, so it's gonna get. Oh, we definitely don't want inputs from all these. Okay, so the input from our keyboard is going into Complete Control, and it is coming out from Complete Control through this Loop MIDI port. All right, so let's close. We may still have an issue with Playground Sessions launching, in that it was kind of hard-coded to the Casio port. So we may have to shut everything down and reconfigure with things, but let's see if we can get it to launch. Okay, looks like it's not launching. Okay, so actually this is a good thing, because this is a problem you may run into, right? So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to open up the Casio port by turning off Complete Control. We want to leave Loop MIDI running, because again, this is what's created that port for us. And now, if we launch Playground Sessions again, it should come up. Hey! In Playground, why haven't you given us the music to your startup noise? I wanna be able to play that, by the way. Okay, so again, I had to drag over from my primary window on my laptop. Apologies. Thank you for obscuring my password, Playground Sessions. That's always a good practice. And then now we're going to have to go into a piece of music. As we all are, I'm in the middle of Prelude in C. But you got to go to a lesson or a piece of music to get to the settings, and we're going to open the settings here. So here in Audio Devices, we're going to say go back to Select a MIDI device. And this time, we are going to see more. It's going to say, hey, Playground Session, stop bogarting that MIDI port and just use that loop MIDI port. And then this may not work. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm hitting the leftmost key. So at this point, because it's not getting any data, because there's no data being forwarded from Complete Control, I'm going to fire up Complete Control again. Okay, we go back here, and let's open up an instrument. And that's not what I wanted to do. Where is that ambient EP? There we go. Okay, a success. So what is happening again is that Complete is getting input from the keyboard. It's sending the same data out through this loop MIDI port. And we have now configured, whoops. We were in the middle of configuring the keyboard. So let's go through this. Select MIDI device. Oh, and I've crashed. I've crashed Playground Sessions. That's the first time that's happened, I promise. Come on. This is not the newest PC that I use, but it's about 4 years old, but it's fairly well configured. 2-core CPU, 16 gigs of RAM, and a SSD. If you use really fancy plugins, sometimes you will be CPU limited. But modern computers, if anything, like I said, this is I got this particular laptop for my daughter while she was still in high school, and she is turning 23, so it's not a brand new laptop. Oh, I didn't want to go to forums. What am I thinking? Let's go back to my playground. There we go. We need to be in a lesson to get to the settings. All right, let's try reconfiguring the settings again. Okay, select a MIDI device. Oh, and it keeps crashing. Okay, let us try this again. Okay, turn off. Apologies for this taking so long, but like I said, there's no chance I'm going to be editing this later, so apologies. I may put some markers in the description to show you different spots in the video. All right, third or fourth or fifth time is the charm. And again, we're going to have to fire up complete. And again, with its very precious spelling of complete. Okay. So now that we've got that working, I'm going to go back to Playground and complete the setup. So leftmost key and then the rightmost key. Hey, success. All right, so now what you're hearing is we're getting audio from both Complete as well as Playground. So the one thing I'm going to do over here on Playground Sessions is basically turn the volume of the piano completely down. So now what we have is I'm going to completely slaughter this because
1, 2, set, go.
Well, that's odd. Come on. Let's try reopening this course. There we go. Okay, what I want to show you is that the sound will now be coming from Complete Control, but you'll still get the features
2,
that we want to use.
Go.
All right, so we're now using basically a VST plugin to get piano sounds, but we still get to use Playground for what it's for, which is learning the piano. So this raises another issue. Complete Control is free, it's awesome, but most of the things you get in the free pack don't sound very much like a piano. If you don't want to sound like a piano, great, that's perfect. However, if the original goal of this entire exercise was to get a better sounding piano, we're only halfway there. However, this is where, again, where I say don't spend any money. There are some VST plugins that you can find on the internet that are completely free. And by completely free, I mean completely free. No money. You will have to register. You will get the occasional piece of spam. But there, particularly if you search for YouTube videos, and they'll talk about like free VST instruments. There's one that's like extremely popular that everybody mentions. It's really only free if you actually buy one of their other paid products. The piano I'm going to show you is completely free, and it sounds pretty damn amazing. This is the Monastery Grand from Melda Production. And I wish I could say I was completely happy with the software, but it's a little bit weird. When you downloaded Native Instruments Complete, you got this wonderful wrapper that holds all the sounds for you. When you install Monastery Grand, what I recommend is, even though I'm going to provide a link to this, the actual page with the instrument and the VST plugin on it, don't download this directly from the web page. It's not a complete disaster because if you know what you're doing, you can point the software to it. But if you notice in this, Monastery Grand requires mSound Factory to work, right? mSound Factory is this kind of weird plugin wrapper because they have their own weird plugin format. And the only reason this is acceptable is Monastery Grand sounds amazing. After you've installed this mSound Factory player, what you'll see is if you search for new installed Melda Production, there's basically nothing in the start menu. There's uninstall audio plugins and Melda Production website. You're like, well, how do I run this stuff? Fortunately for me and you, is their this M Sound Factory player is not really a standalone player. It's a plugin that shows up in other what are called hosts. Usually, a DAW is the host that most people talk about, but it turns out Complete Control is a host as well. If we hit this little arrow here and go to Instruments, you can see, hey, there's Melded Production. And again, this is frustrating because it doesn't say Grand Piano, it says M Sound Factory. But if we go back here, it says, hey, you need M Sound Factory to play the Monastery Grand. That was my clue that that's what I wanted to launch. Now, if we come here, you can, this is where I would recommend download and install Instruments. It brings up, and of course it brings it up in another window. It brings up another page where what I would do is say download and install from here. 3.5 gig. I'm not gonna lie, that's a ton of data. I apologize for those of you who aren't on fast internet, but that's just the way piano plugins work. Well, not all piano plugins, but most piano plugins work by they find themselves a really gorgeous grand piano to work with. Sometimes it's an upright piano, but usually they just find a really, really good piano, and then they set up a bunch of mics. They spend all this time, and then they'll play, hey, let's play middle C. And then they'll play middle C lightly, a little heavier, and they just generate, dozens, if not hundreds of samples for each and every key, different intensities, different durations. And so 3.5 gigabytes is actually on the small side for a sample-based VST piano. But you can see here, navigation screen within navigation screen. I go to keyboards, and I don't want artificial, I want piano, and there it is, Monastery Grand. And let's select it. There is a little bit of lag because it's got to load this stuff, but here we are. Let's see. It's a piano. The output is a little low, but you can fiddle with that with these. What's basically a volume knob. Say, hey, let's bump this up a little bit. All right, and so let's do the thing where we listen to a note. And that is through my headphones, it's immediately better. I almost guarantee that in YouTube land, videos get compressed both visually and sound-wise. So you're probably not going to hear a huge difference or any difference at all between the Playground Sessions piano and this piano, but there is a difference. Trust me. And that's really all there is to it. It's a lot of work. I would recommend you can fiddle with these settings, but you got to learn to say, hey, what I want to do is once if you've monkeyed around with the controls a little bit, you want to save your preset, because the next time you load, you want to be able to load your settings, otherwise they all disappear. Right, and now you're and I'm not going to play around with any of the settings. You can add different mics. They make very subtle modifications to the sound, but you can spend hours tweaking and getting your perfect sound. That is basically it. And again, thanks. Apologies this took so long, both in the time it took to make this video and the total length of this video. It's bound to be crazy long at this point. But thanks. If you have simple questions, I can help with simple questions. But warning, I work with computers for a living, but not these kind of computers. So my ability to help you with problems is probably going to be pretty limited. So thanks for watching, and enjoy Playground Sessions. I hope you enjoy Playground Sessions as much as I have. And I hope you enjoy these the new and improved piano noises if you're able to get this working. Thanks.